the FDA just released data on adverse effects for compounded medication, and I'm so excited to share it. Please stay to the end for context. Compounded medication has not been FDA approved, meaning the FDA has not specifically tested it for safety or efficacy, so they kind of describe it as slightly riskier. However, the FDA recommends, if you're going that route, that you get a prescription from your doctor and you use state-licensed pharmacies. They bring up and acknowledge that there are counterfeit compounded GLP-1 medication, meaning there's medication that looks like it's from a compounding pharmacy, but it's not a real compounding pharmacy, or there's medication that looks like it's from a licensed compounding pharmacy, but it actually isn't. This is a big reason why I made GLP Winner. We try to surface what compounding pharmacies people use and check licensing and let you read reviews for them. The FDA acknowledges that there's slightly more overdosing risk simply because the instructions are less clear. It's not an auto-injector. You're gonna have to inject yourself. The FDA acknowledges that retatrutide and cagrilintide are not allowed to be compounded because those components have not been FDA approved yet, and they do not like salt forms of semaglutide. They also acknowledge that there are counterfeit versions of name brand medication, like counterfeit Ozempic, that looks like Ozempic and presents itself as Ozempic, and that's different from compounding. Most important part, the adverse effects. The FDA says many of the adverse events reported for compound products appear to be consistent with adverse events related to the FDA-approved versions of these products, meaning there isn't a massive difference between the adverse events between name brand and compounded. Since April 30th of this year, there's been 1,000 reports of adverse events, and we know that there's been over 80 million compounded prescriptions filled, meaning the adverse event rate is quite low. 503B pharmacies are required to report adverse events to the FDA. 503A pharmacies are not required to do that. So this is likely a little bit lower because we are including 503A pharmacy data in this. 1,000 adverse events out of 80 million prescriptions, that's 1.25 thousandths of a percent. So while the FDA doesn't explicitly test compounded medication for safety or efficacy, the adverse event rate appears to be extremely low. So share this with somebody who said compounding is unsafe.